Announce and Good afternoon, everyone. So we are here with the shortlist announcement for the 8th edition of Oxford Bookstore Book Cover Prize. Now, the Oxford Bookstore Book Cover Prize was instituted in 2015, and this is the 8th edition that we are currently running. So the prize, it's basically to discover and award the brilliance in cover design. So it's a first of its kind honor for splendor in book design and an endeavor by the iconic Oxford bookstores to empower and acknowledge the phenomenal work that artists, book cover designers, graphic designers who work on book jackets do. The prize acknowledges the significance of the adjust of illustrations, story, especially in our undeniable visual age, and also when a lot of book sales happen, just by looking at book covers or visually, the visual appearance of book covers. I'm delighted to have with us today our chair of jury, Dr. Alka Pande, Shobhaa ma'am, who's been with the prize with us for quite a few years now. Also joining us virtually today is Dr. Kunal Basu, who's also been with the prize for a couple of years now. So before we move ahead and announce our shortlist, which is derived from, so let me just tell you the process. We get over 500, 600 covers every year, which are book jackets that are published through the year with a cap on every publisher, limiting to 3 covers that every imprint can submit to the bookstore for the cover design prize. And from that 500, 600 covers, the jury longlists the covers to say, basis their votes, the selection, and different criteria for judging. They skim it down to some 20 to 25 covers. So from 500, 600 covers, we come to 25 covers, which was recently announced in Delhi. So the long list had 21 covers, and now we are going to skim it down further and announce the 6 covers which are on the short list. So before we move ahead and announce the short list, I'd like to ask Dr. Alka Pande first, the process. She's been with the prize the longest. In fact, she was one of the key people who instituted, for the concept of the prize and its institution, she was phenomenally involved. So we're delighted to have her here. She's the chair of jury, so we'll begin with you, ma'am.
Thank you, Neeta.
Hello.
Hi, that's Kunal speaking.
No, can't hear anything.
Tech team, can you please look into this?
So I'm delighted to be here from a very chilly Delhi, enjoying the lovely balmy afternoon of Kolkata. Just to say that in the last 8 years, the cover book design, which was instituted by the Oxford Bookstore, by Priti Paul and Namita Gokhale, who is the co-director of the Jaipur Literature Festival. It has been actually a long journey, but a very, very interesting journey. It started small and it has become very big. And as Neeta just finished telling us, we had more than 600 people and publishers, independent designers, including independent authors, because as you know, there is a lot of self-publishing happening today. The world has changed, and no longer the author has to go looking for the right publisher. Sometimes they are confident enough to do it themselves. And as we've heard, the very oft repeated quote saying, "Never judge a book by its cover," the cover does play a very important role, particularly when it is in a bookshop and even now on the digital media. You look at the cover and you get intrigued or you start questioning. A book today is like a film director who has a whole team working with them. So in the same way, a book has an editor, a writer, a proofreader, a designer, and also the press. So what happens with the book cover, Shobhaa, if I may just take your book and just show the people. For example, there is Insatiable, My Hunger for Life, Shobhaa Day. So this is a book cover. Now, if you happen to be in a bookshop where there are a zillion books there, and you see this book, it may appeal to some, it may not appeal to some, it may leave some cold. So a person like Shobhaa, who is well known, there will be people waiting for her book. But there are a lot of not known people, so the book cover is very, very important for them. If you have a Nobel laureate like Annie Ernaux, who's writing a book, people will be waiting for it. But if you have a young girl called Pritika Kumari from Jharkhand who's writing a book, it's very difficult for her to really fight for that big space in the show window. So the cover designer becomes very, very important. And the graphic designer who's doing the book has also to be thoughtful, has to have read the book, and what he or she has to do, or them has to do today, to use a politically correct language, has to really capture the essence of the book in just one cover. So we have looked very carefully at it, and it has not also been exactly easy, because as you know, the people in the jury, we are 6 of us, absolutely different people with different sensibilities, with different sense of aesthetics. So we had our own kind of interfighting, as it were. it was difficult to come down and pare it down to 21. And I think it was even more difficult to bring it down to 6. Poor Neeta has been struggling, coordinating with all of us. Thank you so much for doing that. It's not been an easy task. But we are really happy that the book cover prize has grown. And when you see this particular shortlist, you will see, for example, from the one which I'm reading, I have a university press which has made it to the, short list, and it's incredible because normally when you look at university press, they really don't care much about book design because for them it's the content, it's more academic, whether it's the Harvard or the Chicago or OUP or Sage or Rutledge, they don't really bother so much about the graphic quality. They may just look at the fonts, they may just look at the typography, because for them they look at it from a more academic point of view. Even in graphic design, there are different layers of looking at what a design is. Some people just don't bother about typography at all. They just look at the visual. They look at color. So this was the process. And I think as we are judging, we are all also educating ourselves. I, for one, I look at many more things. I'm reading much more about graphics. I'm actually a trained art historian and a curator, and I never looked into graphics in that way, because I only look at graphics when I'm doing a scenography for an exhibition. But when I'm looking at the written word, and I'm looking now at how graphics is also changing, because earlier it was just about font and just about some image. Now you are having different kinds of things. You are having different materials which are coming into the making of the book cover, different kind of digital enrichments to it. So I am in a way grateful to be on the jury of this and to be the chair of the jury, because I would say I've learned a lot in the last 8 years, and I feel very enriched, and I feel delighted to be in a position to see the wonderful creativity coming in, not only from brands, but coming in, and I personally think, and I believe a lot in it, it's coming in from the two-tier towns of our country. You know, we in metros are terribly privileged. We have attitude and I think a sense of great privilege, which I see is not there from the two-tier cities. There's a hunger, and it's the hunger which keeps you alive. And that's what insatiable is all about. Also, the word. I haven't read the book, so I don't want to comment on that. But there is an insatiable appetite of the creative energy of this country, which we are saluting. So I think I've said
thank you so
what
much.
I could in this short time. Thank you.
Over to you, ma'am. So what has been, your experience?
Thanks, Neeta, and thank you for that wonderful introduction to the jury process and what goes into it, and the amount of time and energy and effort put in by everybody to finally arrive at a short list, which of course we'll all be fighting over for till the bitter end. Like Alka said, people come with different sensibilities. For someone like myself, essentially a magazine person, I've been the editor of 3 magazines, the cover has always played a very, very key and very crucial role. So month after month, we are looking at a cover that has to jump out from the stands and attract a reader. So I have never, ever underestimated the power of a cover since then, and that's been 55 years since Stardust started. Now, when I look at book design, it's even more important having so many books of my own, and some of them which get redesigned ever so often. I am very, very deeply invested in the covers of my own books, and also the covers of the books that I have been a publisher of, because it is your passport. It's your very first introduction to a reader is the visual appeal of the cover. And I know, working with design teams, how much effort and thinking goes into it. It's not just something that they look at a manuscript and get a superficial idea of the book. and then immediately tackle the cover and come up with a design. They read the book deeply and absorb it, work as a team, come up with several ideas which they present to the author. And I know for this book, for Insatiable, for example, we struggled for over 2 or 3 months with different ideas. Nothing appealed to me at all. It was too bland. And the book is not bland. It is sensual, and it is kind of rich in memory. And I wanted that conveyed. There's an opulence about the food I'm describing. And pop art seemed to me the right way forward. So when we found an image and created the visuals around it, I was really, really happy that we had got the right cover. I knew instinctively we'd got the right cover. So similarly, the books that we were all looking at and judging, it seems like such a strong word, with each cover, I haven't read every single book on the shortlist, but I would look at the cover and say, does it make me want to read the book? Even though it may not be a subject that I know much about, is it seducing me enough, the cover, to say, okay, this is a book I want to go out and read? And it happened with most of the books that were shortlisted. So I think we've done a good job of selection. So thank you very much for having me on the jury, and it's been a great pleasure. Thank you. Kunal wants to say something. Can you hear us, Kunal?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Oh, lovely. Okay. Do tell us your process in distant London.
Right. Well, good morning from a very cold Oxford. I think it's about 2 degrees here now, but just seeing all of you resplendent on this wonderful stage actually sort of it warms up my heart. Look, first of all, a very big thank you to Alka, the chair of the jury, for having me on the jury, to the Oxford Bookshop, and to all my fellow jury members. It has really been a great learning experience and privilege for me. Look, every year the job is getting harder. It is getting harder because of a variety of things. Well, firstly, last year, I think, during the awards ceremony in Delhi, I'd mentioned that it would be nice to have a much broader representation of publishers and books coming in from very different parts of the country. Not simply the English language publishers, but also the diversity of publishing in the Indian languages. And we've started to see that in very good numbers. And that, I think, enriches, again, the whole, the domain of book covers. The second thing that has appealed to me over the years, and especially this year, is the execution of the artwork. You know, sometimes a designer or an artist would come up with a great idea, and that idea itself would be compelling enough to put on the jacket, but then its execution needs to be exciting as well. And, you know, and I think there's more attention to execution with respect to the covers that have been shortlisted this time. And that definitely is a step up. So it's not only a prize, an award that is getting a lot of attention around the country, it is also enriching itself in terms of submissions, in terms of the thinking process that goes behind it. I agree wholeheartedly with what the two of you, Alka and Shobhaa, you said about the importance of book covers. And let me just quickly add a very small aspect that is particularly appealing to me. You see, literature, music, cinema, art, they're all siblings in the arts. Yeah. And although we practitioners, somebody may be a writer, somebody may be a musician, somebody may be an artist, we really are siblings in the greater family of the arts. And so what I see the book cover is a meeting of art and literature, okay? A conversation between art and literature. And I'm increasingly trying not to think about book design, but as book art. Okay? And many of the individuals who have done exemplary work on the shortlisted books are truly artists, and they've captured the essence of literature through their artwork. So this is where the siblings have come together. And I salute the Book Cover Prize because it creates a venue for the two facets of the arts, literature and visual arts, to come together. And very worthwhile venture, and I'm really very, very glad to be a part of it. Wish Shashi was here as well to join us. Again, congratulations and thank you, Neeta, for having me on board.
Thank you, Dr. Basu. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will be announcing this shortlist right away. But before that, I'd like to tell you the jury, which has been a part of this shortlist process, is Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Dr. Alka Pande, Shobhaa, Priti Paul, our group director for Apeejay Surendra Group, and Dr. Kunal Basu. So I'd like to request Dr. Alka Pande to announce the first 3 names from the top 6 covers that have made it to the shortlist.
I think I need to get up and give the due gravitas to the award. So I don't think it is in the order of merit, really. We're just doing it random so that we're waiting for the big wow for the winner. So I'm going to be announcing 3, and the lovely Shobhaa is going to be announcing the next 3. So the first one which I'm announcing, the nominated book is Pebble Monkey. The name of the author is Manendra Gupta. The name of the designer is Paramita Brahmachari. And the name of the publisher, which I'm delighted really, is the Jadavpur University Press. The second book which I'm announcing is Memory Police. The name of the author is Yoko Ogawa. The name of the designer is Lisa John. And the name of the publisher is DC Books from Kerala. The third book is Bird Watching, a novel. The name of the author is Stephen Alter. The name of the designer is Bena Sareen. She somehow creeps into all our, lists, and she has been a winner once before. And the name of the publisher is Aleph Book Company. So Shobhaa, please come and announce the next 3.
Book number 4, the nominated book, is Invisible Empire. Name of the author, Pranay Lal. Name of the designer, Alavad Gunjan. He's also been on our shortlist, I think, last year, and a winner. Name of the publisher, Viking. The 5th nominated book, Shakti, an exploration of the divine feminine. Name of the author, Nilima Chitgopekar. Name of the designer, Priyanka Thakur. She has also been on our shortlist. Name of the publisher, Dorling Kindersley. Nominated book at number 6, The Muslim Vanishes. Name of the author, Saeed Naqvi. Name of the designer, Antra. And name of the publisher, Vintage. So that's the 6 shortlisted books, all of them fabulous, each one a winner. So thank you. Thanks, Neeta.
Thank you so much. Over to our presentation by Shubhra Prakash now. Thank you.
May I, Neeta, with your permission?
Yes, sure, sir, sure.
Take leave now.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, jury, for all the shortlists, and congratulations to all the shortlisted book covers. This session will be followed by presentations, that is Fontwala, from ancient script to digital keyboard, by Shubhra Prakash. Shubhra Prakash is the writer for Priya's Mask, the 4th comic in the Priya's Sakti series. She co-wrote, produced, and acted in an original play, The Music in My Blood, about Indian classical music that was seen by over 1,000 audience members in the New York City area and the East Coast in 2018. Thank you.
Hello, hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Um, Congratulations to everyone whose name was just called out. And I would like to request if the first clip can be played before I begin. Oh, okay, we are waiting. I'm supposed to wait. First. Can you go back? It's the very first slide, which is black. Which is completely black. Yeah, and it should be played. It's not. It doesn't have a template. It doesn't have the template. The first slide is completely black without. And it's the first file in the folder. And it is the first file. It's the first file in the folder, which has a black slide. Can you just put the film? It's a black slide. Yeah, but it has to be filled. So you start playing once we are off the standby. There is nothing like this. So what should I do? You can just wait. I'll give a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, then you start. Please note, when the standby is off at 5, 1, the film starts playing first and then Shubha ma'am speaks. I repeat, the film starts playing first and then Shubha ma'am speaks. The video is being played live. Please play the video with the black screen. Please play the video with the black screen. I'm not seeing the video.
Yeah, they don't read the Who is going to be played this one? And then she starts.
There should be audio with that, so. Okay. hope so. I will start. Looks good. I do. There it is.
Atakdaf si ad, test as yatak.
Lito buna kalehne tike.
Namawi Rui, Namawi Tapatawi Ponan, Wanyil Namawi Tungara Tumbiwalan, Ngayambun.
For Noah, Kakai, Anga Fetu Utaki.
What you just watched is a segment of a poetry film called Khonsai that you can watch on YouTube for free. It's a longer poem made of 50 verses in endangered languages. A friend in New York showed me this poetry film, and its title, as you would have seen, was written in the Devanagari script from the Hindi language, and it said Khonsai. If you can show the next slide, and you'll see that DVD cover that I saw in their home. And it impressed my American friend that I could read the title out loud. I mean, how often was I seeing Devanagari script, you know, in an American friend's home, sitting on their DVD aisle. So when I read it, you know, I remembered, of course, I have grown up speaking, reading, writing Hindi. In fact, correction, I first spoke Bengali because I grew up the first 7 years of my life here in Kolkata. I told my friend, you know, by the way, this Khonsai word that you have on that DVD cover, it doesn't mean anything in Hindi. And my friend said, actually, it means something else in another language. And I said, okay, so that's strange. You take a word from one language and write it in the script of another. How strange? And he said, it's not strange at all, because your name, Shubhra, S-H-U-B-H-R-A, it doesn't mean anything in English, but it doesn't mean anything in German, French, Italian, Spanish, all the languages that use those very Latinate characters. Your name doesn't mean anything in them, but we need those characters, because if we don't have them and we don't write your name in this way, then how will anyone here in America know how to pronounce your name? And this journey, along with the journey of being an artist of Indian origin in New York, in America, put me on a sort of exploration to figure out more things about words and scripts and survival of scripts in our ever-changing world. And I was lucky in that fashion, because in my family I have someone who has known this journey from a very, very close perspective. If you could show the next slide, I'm a theater artist creating and performing work in the US, and I'm drawn to storytelling, character performance, and understanding the world through these devices. So an encounter with Khonsai made me want to go deeper into the world of scripts. And like I said, I had someone in my family to kind of guide me in this discipline that I had
that I didn't know anything about, this world of languages, this world of typing, this world of technology. So if you can move 2 slides ahead, because next is just my face, you're already seeing me. So the next one is, this is my uncle. His name is Rajiv, the one before, please. His name is Rajiv Prakash, and he's a typographer and font designer. And I shall refer to him as Fontwala. That's the title of this presentation, Fontwala and the journey of an ancient script to the digital platform. And why Fontwala? Because he happens to be a font designer of Indian scripts. And he took his love for languages and scripts and his skills as a calligrapher and turned it into a business. In the late 90s, he ended up designing the Anglo-Nagari keyboard, which is one of the first softwares that could allow one to type in Hindi on the computer. Now, he would contribute as a result of this to the world of printing for mass production at a time when the digital revolution had just begun in India in the early 90s, when the computers had started to arrive. And now I will use his perspective to cover some of this journey, whatever is possible in this time, about the journey of scripts. So let me begin where he started his first job as a teenager in Allahabad at the St. Paul Society magazine called The Teenager. At the Teenager magazine, Fontwala's job is to create headlines, this is a video, for the front cover by hand. The Teenager covers a wide range of topics for the young audience: career guidance, study tips, music, jokes, games, photography, sports, moral stories, values, and general knowledge. You know, things that matter to teenagers. Well, anyhow, an example would be how to become pen pals, and he would create that for that text-oriented magazine. This magazine that was geared up for missionary messaging with the undertones of, we will be taking you to the way of Christ. In fact, that is how the printing press came to India, through the way of the church in the 1540s. The printing press first came to the state of Goa with the Portuguese missionaries, and it was especially sent from Portugal for this purpose, and it was not available to average Indians at this point. Jesuit priests learned the local Konkani language, next slide please, and printed several Bibles. By 1674, about 50 books on Christianity had been printed in Konkani and in the Kannada languages. These were the first books printed for mass production in India. Catholic priests printed the first Tamil book in 1597 at Cochin, and in 1713, the first Malayalam book was printed, books to spread the word of Christ. And about 100 years later, when India was colonized by the British, the press was again used to print books in several Indian languages for British officers to learn those languages. But the printing press, you see, is a double-edged sword, because at the same time, it was used by Indians to motivate their fellow countrymen and women in order to overthrow their oppressive rulers. If I can move on to the next slide, please. A discourse through the press had begun in Indians as soon as they had access to the printing press, and they had started printing their own publications. Now, freedom fighters like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, he created publications like Kesari and Maratha, and revealed in Marathi itself the injustices of the British. So now people were starting to see their own language being printed. Bal Gangadhar Tilak would print Kesari in Marathi for the readers, and he would expose things like unfair taxes, and he would challenge the British in their own language in English in Maratha. And so sharp was his rhetoric that crowds would gather onto streets during festival gatherings to protest the government. And the British at this point were so terrified of this movement that they started creating laws, such as the Vernacular Act, that would prohibit Indians to print in local languages. Publications in native languages would have to be approved by the commanding British officers. Printing was at the forefront of the freedom struggle. Now, many of these publications were kept running for over 100 years. In fact, Kesari runs still today without taking a day's break. Back to Fontwala and his story, who in the 80s is getting his BFA or bachelor's in the fine arts in BHU. Previously, for pocket money back in his hometown, he would paint election ads on the walls. But now he had to make ends meet at the college, so he gets a job at a local advertising agency, and his job is to write. Not to write articles or stories, it's actually to write, to be a lettering artist, to make design and text and art. Please play. for materials such as candy wrappers or makeup bottles, sindoor bottles. How do you fit all that text, an entire address on top of a cosmetic bottle? That is an art at a time when you don't have other tools. Other printing, you're doing this by hand. You're writing within the scale of 4 centimeters, which would then be condensed down to 2 centimeters. Now, this is another one of his series of jobs that he did, like the teenager, for refining his skills as a lettering artist. And it took time to write those words, you know, to make them look legible, to write them beautifully, to add the art. And sometimes when his boss was getting a little frustrated that we had to get this done really fast, he would just say, you know what, just do it in English, it will be faster. But why would it be faster in English? And the next slide, I will show you the transfer sheets that were quite popular in English letters that were being produced. These transfer sheets at that point were only available in English for letters in different styles. Nothing like this was available in any of the Indian languages at this point. You would take those stickers and paste it on the art and make several copies, condense or expand the designs. That's what would make it faster. In the next slide, if some of you might be able to tell what this is from a bygone age, is the dot matrix printer. In the late 80s, our Fontwala has made it to IIT Bombay, IDC School of Design. And the first day of his master's education, a very quiet-looking professor gives the class an assignment. Why don't you handwrite your name in the font of your choice in 10 minutes? In 10 minutes. 10 minutes is not enough time to do that. Well, in 10 minutes, he comes around and he says, time's up, and he snatches everybody's paper. And they all realize that this was not a test in how wonderfully you can write your name, but it was a test of time management. This professor is in touch with the reality of the world. He is geared towards commercial art. He wants to prepare these artists for production. And he, R.K. Joshi by the name, a renowned calligrapher and designer at that time, became the guru and the mentor for Fontwala. And he actually introduced him. So now at this point, Fontwala is in his early 20s, and for the first time in his life, he sees a computer. And R.K. Joshi creates in him a curiosity to perhaps try calligraphy, or you could say font designing, on the computer. While sharing these stories with me, I'm speaking from the perspective of Fontwala. He would often show me details or logistics from the past. For example, he would say that in 1778, in Kolkata itself, Charles Wilkins, employed by the East India Company, designed the first successful metal-type font cast in India for Bengali. It was Wilkins who then cast the first Devanagari font in 1786, used in printing Sanskrit and Urdu verses in a book in 1789, also here in this city, Kolkata. So first metal types to be cast in India in these languages was right here. Now, out of the many books he kept showing me while I was researching this play to write, there was one that he pulled out from his bookcase, which is a video that we'll play next. This was a book that read 1890 Nirnay Sagar Press, a book full of Devanagari letter forms. Nirnay Sagar printing press printed texts in Sanskrit and Marathi, and it printed them with hot metal fonts or removable types. And he would keep pointing, look at those words. There is a space between each letter. This shows hand composing. This shows someone took metal letter forms that were designed and then put them right next to each other. Those spaces don't exist anymore because we type on the computer. There is no such thing as hand composing in the world of today. And I would ask Fontwala, you know, I'm writing a play about your work. So why are we looking at 1800s and early 100s? Why don't we talk about the keyboard you designed, and what has this got to do, all of this stuff? And he says, if you want to know about my work, you cannot skip over a time period of hot metal types. If you really want to talk about font designers, you cannot skip over it, and you should know about this gentleman who created the Nirnay Sagar printing press. Jauji Dadaji was the owner of Nirnay Sagar printing press, a man of precision. To test the printing of his books, Jauji Dadaji would ask readers, who were mainly priests, to arrive at 4 a.m. and have them seated in front of an oil lamp with pothis or manuscripts that had just come out of the printer. They had one job: read the print. Incantations and prayers that only they could pronounce correctly. And next to them would be a man with a notebook taking down any mispronunciations. 4 a.m. was the time, and Jauji Dadaji considered it the time of Brahma Muhurat. Whatever is read, whatever is spoken is remembered better. So the man would be standing waiting to catch a mispronunciation, and if there was a mistake, the entire process would be stopped. A few of those, and according to Jauji Dadaji, the printing was not correct. The entire book must be reprinted till there are no mispronunciations. Those were the rules of Jauji Dadaji. The interesting thing about Jauji Dadaji is that he was an illiterate himself. His literacy stopped at writing his own name in his mother tongue Marathi. He got his start at the age of 10 when he was selling fruit from door to door, and he stopped or landed at the doorstep of Thomas Graham of the American Missions Press. Thomas Graham was a blacksmith who turned into a type designer. And Graham employed the lad for a monthly salary of 2 rupees for cleaning and polishing metal types in the type foundry of the press. These are the examples of the hot metal types. And Fontwala tells me, when he looks at this, he thinks about aksharon ki kharidari, a trade of letter forms, a time when you appear at the type foundry and say, give me 2 kilos of Devanagari. In that 2 kilos, whatever comes, whatever words, letter forms come, are the letter forms you will use to do whatever work you are supposed to do. Now, this also brings in the way the writers work and how astute they are in forming those words with the given types that they have in front of them. Fontwala was inspired by the precision, quality, dedication of Jauji's Nirnay Sagar press, and he prizes those frail books with tattered corners. Now, back to his college days, when Fontwala is completing projects under the tutelage of his very demanding professor, R.K. Joshi, it is becoming very clear that this computer, whatever this thing is, becoming an important part of the design world. And at the same time, on the other side of the world, in the Western world, the PC and Mac are in fierce competition to gain popularity amongst the public. Now, in Fontwala's mind, there is a persistent question at the time, how can our languages, how can Devanagari be typed on the computer that is entering our world at a great speed? And the problem was a crucial one, and there are more characters in Hindi than there are in English language. For example, you have K, for K in English, but in Hindi you have ka, kha, ga, gha. So which K and where are you going to put it on that Roman keyboard? You know, you have P in English, you have pa, pha, ba, bha in Hindi. Many sounds, and that's just Hindi. There are so many more languages in India. How will we be accounting for them? At this point, he has graduated and he has gotten a job in the R&D, in the research and development of a software or computer company, VSS. He researches and designs fonts, and sometimes the company sends him into homes of people to teach them how to use the computer, use their software. When you are in Bombay, it's not unusual to end up at the home of someone who works in the film industry. So Fontwala ends up one day trying to teach an actor how to type on his laptop, which is an unusual thing at the point. And the actor blurts out while typing, you know, it would be interesting if I type my name on the English keyboard and it appears in Hindi on the screen. Something clicks in Fontwala's mind. When he leaves the actor's house on the 396 bus towards his home, that 40-minute journey was enough for him to design the entire keyboard in his head, one that would allow for the actor to type his name in English and see it appear in Hindi on the screen. Every key of the English keyboard would map to the Hindi or Hindi letter forms, and in his design, he would make room for all of them. So Shift S will type Sa, K will type Ka, and K Shift H will type Kha, G plus H will type Gha, and G is Ga, and the keyboard will be called Anglo-Nagari. He will make sure that all letter forms find a place. He gets together with a few engineers from work to create the software, and also begins now his own company called VSoft that releases a publishing software called Asterix Publishing Software, designing and typing in Hindi for publications, newspapers, etc. on the computer. This is the goal. The software is called APS, Asterix Publishing Software. It has the Anglo-Nagari keyboard, and it is introduced into the market, and it takes the market by storm. Now the English keyboard will type in an Indian script. It is not like they want other players in the market. There was one in particular that must be mentioned, Leap. Leap was a complete Indian language software for office publications. The government had created it themselves, technologically advanced, and everyone in Fontwala's company's team knew this, but there was a joke at their office, that while you'd have to be a scientist to run Leap, their software, APS, could be operated by a child. To promote and sell the software, his team carried their desktops and computers everywhere to road shows, exhibition stalls, shop demonstrations. They showed people that they could type their script and the language and see them appear on this new thing entering the world, which is the computer. If you go on to the next slide, we'll see the 4 different main fonts designed by him that took over the market, that he made available. You want a solution for your administrative team? They have a solution with APS, APS 2000 Plus. For other solutions, there is APS Programmer 4. Imagine your books in beautiful fonts, you know, the kind that you've never seen before. Virat font. Virat, what does it mean? Larger than life. You can print the epics in Virat. APS brings with it the Anglo-Nagari keyboard. Print all your books, magazines, newspapers in your script. People were thrilled that APS was easy to use and offered them also beautiful fonts. And he would go out of his way to fulfill all the obscure needs. If somewhere in some far small town, someone having APS said that they need a particular character that they must use that is not even used in the Hindi language that frequently, he would provide it to them. The company would work towards every single consumer, no matter how big or small they were. They would stay up late into the night, create those CDs, have them shipped wherever they had to be gone. No one was insignificant. And the reason why APS at that time became successful was it did more than just to solve the problem of typing Hindi on the computer. The most comprehensive user manual, variety of font choices, and then the detailed clip art. They provided around 2,000 hand-drawn clip art, or as now we would call emojis in today's world, that showed unique Indian sensibilities. As a result, dealers would buy APS by the hundreds. And when the Reserve Bank of India order comes in, it is the biggest win. So there it was, a moving business, an idea materialized, the love for shapes and letters and languages that had started to become a livelihood. He had done not what all artists can, which is to successfully change from an artist to an entrepreneur. Now it is important to note at this point that types of or fonts designed by APS or other companies that were springing up all over India, they were done in a particular format called the non-Unicode format. So everyone coded their own fonts differently. If you wanted to change from font of one software into another, you would get gibberish. That's the next video you will get to see. So if you wanted to change from one, then you would see that it turns out to be gibberish because there was no sort of universal mapping. Okay, 5 more minutes. All right, if you could impress the customer with your keyboard and you got to them first, then you would just go ahead and let them be your customer and they could never switch out. At this point, something like Microsoft comes in, they have universal mapping. They have what will change the course of typing scripts on the computer, and that is Unicode. When Unicode comes in, it solves the problem of typing by a large share, but the problem that it introduces is that it gives out fonts for free. And as it is true about anything being given out for free, the quality declines. So you start seeing letter forms, you start seeing things being typed on the computer that don't look quite right. The matras, the conjuncts are off, but people have no complaints because it is being sold for free. So I would just like to say that a medium is a strong influence in how a script is defined and how it will survive. If you take a look back, this is an example of the discrepancies that happened with the fonts. When the free fonts started rolling out into the markets, companies that were doing jobs of making beautiful non-Unicode fonts now were not significant. They needed money to survive, and if a company is giving out free fonts, no one is going to ask for those beautiful fonts that cost money. So moving on, quickly I will show you why medium is important and how the script's journey is shaped and how it lasts. Devanagari was written largely in the past on birch bark. Many of the South Indian languages were written in palm leaves. Palm leaves would not tear easily if you wrote rounded letter forms. That is how they evolved. And several other languages, for example, the ones written on the stone, the ancient scripts like Brahmi or the Gupta script that you see in the iron pillar juxtaposed against the Qutub Minar, these scripts are angular or geometric in these shapes because their medium is rock or stone or in this case even metal. So a medium, as mediums have changed, so have the letter form, but you can still find the soul of a letter form endure itself through different ages. So if you look at Brahmi and the ka in Brahmi and the ka of Devanagari, you can see the evolution, how that ka changes from a geometric shape onto a shape of today's Devanagari, which allows for the curved shapes. We have come a long way with scripts of India on stone, bhojpatra, tadpatra, to paper, to typewriters, to digital screens. And I know I have taken several liberties in this presentation because it's quite short. And I want to present it as a story and not just an academic thing. So believe me, there are many more stories within this journey of the letter form, which I think would be of quite a lot of interest to writers in particular. Our letter forms and our scripts have allowed for endless creativity, and they have given artists a way to define their work. It would be wrong for me to not point out, and you can find a book in the Oxford booth right there, Sone Chandi Ke Buth by K.A. Abbas, which talks about Satyajit Ray, the iconic filmmaker who was first a visualizer and a font or calligrapher. And in the book it says that Satyajit Ray would have all of his film shoots at the beginning of the career on Sundays because all the other days he was busy being an art director. He designed all of the titles of his posters himself. That was his expression. What I'm trying to say is calligraphy, the way you write your letter forms, these are part of our identity. These are our expressions, but they are not font design. If you want that expression to carry over to something like a digital medium where the most of the world is, then you must work with the font designers. You must bridge that gap that is between the emotional, beautiful calligraphies that you see and the technical work that goes into font designing. We want to see those free-flowing calligraphy and letter forms on the computer. That is the next thing that we must solve in our pursuit of making sure our languages and our scripts thrive in the coming age. And I will end there. Thank you so much.